the interpretation of the phrase presents difficulty. This is owing to the false impression which the word tension conveys at this time. It is associated in the minds of the reading public with the thought of nerves, with points of crisis, with courage and with fatigue. Is this not so? But in reality tension, occultly understood, is not associated with these aspects of personality reaction at all. The esoteric significance of tension, as far as I can explain it by limiting words, is focused immovable will. Right tension is the identification of brain and soul with the will aspect, and the preservation of that identification unchanged and immovable no matter what the circumstances and the difficulties. You can see, therefore, how far ahead of present attitudes and goals this teaching is. Identification with the soul, and with the hierarchy, is dependent upon the ability of the disciple rightly to love. It is the emergence of the second divine aspect, for love is the expression of group life, and that is rare indeed to find in these days. Right tension indicates the emergence of the first aspect, of the will, and this is seldom to be found, as yet, save among the more advanced disciples and initiate members of the hierarchy. Love governs the way into the life of the hierarchy and is the foundation for all approach to, and appreciation and acceptance of truth. Will governs the way into Shambhala and is the foundation for all approach to, appreciation of and identification with, being. This developed will expresses itself as tension, esoterically understood. It embodies the ideas of orientation, implacable determination, ability to wait and to preserve intention and orientation unmoved by aught which may occur. It also involves the determination to take the intended action, always of a creative nature and based on loving understanding, at the psychological moment, right timing, or that exact moment which the psyche or soul determines to be correct. Here you have one of the interesting transferences of meaning, and of relationship which occur in the ageless wisdom. The son or soul emerges into manifestation with the concurrence, and aid of the mother or of the matter aspect. This is to you a most familiar truth. In the next stage, that of initiate development, the son, in its turn, becomes the feminine, or negative aspect and, demonstrating as the psyche, enables the initiate to bring into expression another divine aspect, that of the will. Until the fourth initiation is undergone, it is the soul as a focal point for descending light and for ascending radiance. This dual activity reveals the nature of the will. Note how this phrase from an ancient writing describes the antatana. It is not possible in these brief instructions to deal adequately with the will aspect of divinity, nor would it profit at this time. Aspirants have to learn the nature of the will by the power of inner illumination, and by certain intelligent recognitions. They learn the nature of the self through the aid of the personality, the shadow or distortion of the divine will. They pass from the expression of the will which is purely selfish, self-sufficient and self-focused, to the grasp of the group will and to the effort to embody that group will. This group will is always concerned with that which is not the will of the separated self. As this ability to be selflessly decentralized grows and develops, the aspirant reaches a point where the group life and the group good is seen as an integral part of a much greater whole. This greater whole is being itself, divorced from form, but ever working through form whilst in manifestation, and working with planned purpose. The realization then grows that intelligence and love are not enough, but that they must be supplemented, and implemented by will, which is active intelligent purpose, lovingly applied. The difficulty of this subject is inherent in the fact that basically, no matter how strange this may seem, love is the line of least resistance for the developed human being. It is the governing principle of the present solar system. Will is the governing principle of the next or coming solar system, which will be brought into manifestation through the agency of those human beings who in this solar system arrive at the full expression of the will aspect. Then, in the coming consummating manifestation, love will be to the will aspect what intelligence is, in this solar system, to love. Rule 2. In our study of Rule 1 on initiation, we gained, or perhaps fixed more clearly in our minds, 3 major thoughts. 1. That the path of initiation is one on which we develop the will aspect of divinity. 2. We learn also to use consciousness as a jumping-off place for the recognition of a new state of realization, which is not consciousness at all, as we understand that term. 3. We undergo, prior to each initiation, 2 major tests, that of the burning ground and that of the clear cold light. We close our discussion with the thought of tension, and I defined it as the identification of the brain and soul with the will aspect, and the preservation of that identification unchanged and immovable in all circumstances and difficulties. I mention this as the tension concept or point of attainment underlies the teaching of the rule which we are now going to consider. Rule II. The word has now gone forth from the great point of tension. Accept it as a group. Withdraw not now your application. You could not, if you would, but add to it 3 great demands and forward move. Let there be no recollection, and yet let memory rule. Work from the point of all that is within the content of the group's united life. A close analysis of this rule will convey to the intuition far more than appears upon the surface, and that is rich enough. Each of these rules holds in it the seed of that understanding which must be evoked before the next rule can be mastered. All that is given is ever based on that which has gone before. The 3 great demands of the initiate are based upon the triple call found in Rule 2 for aspirants and disciples. The triple call was earlier sounded forth. Now its higher significances must be comprehended. There are only 4 parts to this rule, which is one of prime importance because it contains the motivating force, the conditioning factors and the place of triumph. All these are indicated. We will, as is our usual custom, study each separate part sequentially, and as far as possible in detail, bearing in mind that initiation deals with factors in latent manifestation for which our languages have no words, and with ideas which are not yet to be found among the rain cloud of knowable things, as Patanjali calls it, that is, knowable to the masses of men. The initiate is, however, dealing with the world of meaning and of affairs which are not yet manifesting in any way. The task of the master, and of those higher than he, is to take those steps and precipitate those waiting events, which will eventually bring them into manifestation. This, I would remind you, is always done by the use of the will, and from a point of tension. 1. The word has now gone forth from the great point of tension. Accept it as a group. I would like here to call your attention to the progressive nature of the esoteric science. It is nowhere better illustrated than in this phrase. Nowhere is it more clearly shown, and yet, unless the intuition and the sense of correlation are functioning, the idea might escape recognition. In all the teaching given to the aspirant and to the disciple in the early stages of their training, the emphasis has been upon the point of light, which must be discovered, brought into full illumination, and then so used that the one in whom the light shines becomes a light bearer in the dark world. This, the aspirant is taught, becomes possible when contact with the soul has been made, and the light is found. This is familiar teaching to many and is the essence of the progress to be made by aspirants and disciples in the first part of their training. We now, however, pass on to another expression, and to the next development in the life of the initiate, which is learning to work from a point of tension. Here lies the new emphasis, and I am bringing it to the attention of humanity, as mankind nears the close, the terrible, but liberating finale, of his great test in this modern burning ground. Now men can pass on into the clear cold light, and from there begin to hold that point of tension which will be evocative of the needed understanding will to move forward along the line of human will to good, the first phase of the development of the will aspect. It is the higher sublimation of the aspirational stage, which precedes the attainment of the point of light through contact with the soul. The point of tension is found when the dedicated will of the personality is brought into touch with the will of the spiritual triad. This takes place in three clearly defined stages. 1. The stage when the lower will aspect, which is focused in the mental body, the will to activity of the personality, is brought into contact with the higher abstract mind. This latter is the interpreting agent for the monad, and the lowest aspect of the triad. Two things can be noted in this respect. A. This contact becomes possible from the moment that the first thin strand of the anticana, the rainbow bridge, is completed between the mental unit and the monasic permanent atom. B. This demonstrates in an absorbing devotion to the plan and is an effort, at any cost, to serve that plan as it is progressively understood and grasped. This expresses itself in the cultivation of goodwill, as understood by the average intelligent human being and put into action as a way of life. 2. The stage wherein the love aspect of the soul is brought into touch with the corresponding aspect of the triad, to which we give the inadequate name of the intuition. This is in reality divine insight and comprehension, as expressed through the formulation of ideas. Here you have an instance of the inadequacy of modern language. Ideas are formless and are in effect points of energy, outward moving in order eventually to express some intention of the divine creating logos. When the initiate grasps this and identifies himself with it, his good will expands into the will to good. Plan and quality give place to purpose and method. Plans are fallible and tentative, and serve a temporary need. Purpose, as expressed by the initiate, is permanent, far-sighted, unalterable, and serves the eternal idea. 3. The stage wherein after the fourth initiation there is direct unbroken relation between the monad, via the triad, and the form which the master is using to do his work among men. This form may be either his temporary personality, arrived at along the normal lines of incarnation, or the specially created form to which theosophists give the technical, but cumbersome word, Mayavirupa. It is the true mask, hiding the radiant light and the dynamic energy of the revealed Son of God. This is the esoteric definition, which I offer you. This stage can be called the attainment of the will to be, not being as an individual expression but being as an expression of the whole, all-inclusive, non-separative, motivated by goodness, beauty and truth and intelligently expressed as pure love. All these stages are achieved by the attainment of one point of tension after another, and the work thus carried forward into the realm of the dynamic steadfast will. This will, as it is progressively developed, works ever from a constant point of tension. We come now to the consideration of a subject, which always proves exceedingly difficult to students. The nature of the word, the AUM, and its later developments, the OM and the sound. Much confusion exists as to its significance or the necessity for its use.